Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going on a bit of a different journey. Not through the web pages and apps you use every day, but deeper, into the layers underneath.
Yeah, we're looking at the hidden history, the actual wires and protocols, the whole infrastructure of the internet.
Exactly. And our guide for this is a really insightful essay by Oliver Werner Neidinger, also known as Lóng Tíng. It's called Between Light and Wire: The Internet's Hidden History.
It's a great piece.
Our goal today is to trace how this thing evolved, from these quiet labs, almost secret beginnings, right up to the incredibly complex system we have now. Looking at the tech, sure, but also the human side, the strategy involved.
And it's funny how we think about the internet now, isn't it? Like, it's just there, like turning on a light switch.
Right, or opening a tap.
Yeah.
Instantaneous.
Yeah. But the essay makes this great point right at the start. It didn't begin with some big, loud bang. It wasn't announced to the world.
It began with a pulse. I like that image.
Me too. It suggests something. Quieter. Almost biological, maybe. Like finding a heartbeat in a lab somewhere, hidden away.
So not about selling stuff online or social media initially?
Not at all. The essay calls its origin existential. It was fundamentally about resilience, about survival, really.
Survival, in what sense?
Well, think about the context. The Cold War. The biggest driving force was creating a network that could actually withstand a major disruption. Even, the nightmare scenario, a nuclear attack.
Okay, wow. So the internet's first job wasn't convenience, it was robustness.
Exactly. The absolute core idea was no single point of failure. Design it so information doesn't rely on just one path. If part of the network gets knocked out, the data, the messages, they just find another way around automatically. That was the dream, this decentralized communication.
So born from strategic anxiety, not market forces.
Precisely. Geopolitical tension was the midwife, you could say. And that fundamental need for resilience, for robustness, it really shaped everything that followed. It's baked into the DNA.
Okay, so let's dive into that history. Starting right at the beginning, the 1960s, the essay calls this the root system. This is ARPANET time, right?
Yeah, the 60s are definitely the roots, where the ideas were planted and the first tended connections were made. ARPANET, funded by RPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in the U.S.
And important to remember, this wasn't for the public.
Not even close. It was a research project, military funded, linking just a few big universities and research places doing defense work. Very exclusive.
And then there's that story, the legendary first connection attempt in '69 between UCLA and Stanford.
Right, October 1969. It's such a great anecdote, almost symbolic. The plan was simple. Someone at UCLA types login, and it appears on the machine at Stanford, character by character. Well, they typed L. It arrived. They typed O. That got through too. Then they typed G, and the whole system crashed.
No way.
Yep. The very first message ever sent over this revolutionary network was just, wow.
Hello. That's kind of perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
All this effort, this huge strategic project. And the first word is an accidental fragment before it breaks.
It really is. The essay calls it a digital Eve. This tiny, almost failed event that, looking back, marked this huge shift, connecting machines across distance. But nobody really knew it then.
Yeah, no news headlines, I imagine.
None. It was all happening quietly, inside these labs, known only to this small group of researchers and government folks.
So the internet of the 60s was nothing like what we experience.
Fundamentally different. The essay describes it perfectly. Academic, elite. No graphics, just command lines, code, questions. You had to be a programmer, really.
No web browsing, no clicking.
No. Just this very technical, often clunky way for scientists and engineers to communicate and share basic resources.
It really paints a picture of something hidden away. Potential, but buried.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Buried in research papers, in secure government facilities. Invisible to almost everyone else living their lives with phones and TVs. It was potential, yes, but locked inside this very specific, closed culture, driven by these big strategic needs.
And that hidden strategic aspect carries right into the 1970s. The essay calls this the decade of digital grammar. What does that mean?
It means this was when the fundamental rules were laid down, the protocols, the actual language that would let different kinds of networks, built by different people, actually talk to each other. This is where TCP/IP comes in.
Ah, TCP/IP. I've definitely seen that in my network settings. But what is it, really? Why was it so important?
Think of it like the universal language and the global postal service combined for data. TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, and IP, Internet Protocol, they work as a team.
Okay.
TCP takes whatever data you have, text, later images, anything, and breaks it into these small, manageable pieces.
Packets.
Little digital envelopes. Exactly. And then IP is like the postal worker. It figures out the addressing and the best route for each packet to get to its destination. They don't all have to take the same path.
Ah, so that connects back to the resilience idea.
Directly. That's the genius of packet switching, which TCP/IP uses, unlike, say, an old phone call that needed one continuous open line.
Right, circuit switching.
Yeah. With packets, if one route is busy or broken, IP just sends the packets another way. They travel independently. Then at the other end, TCP gathers them all up, checks if any are missing, asks for replacements if needed, and puts them back in the right order.
So the message gets through even if the network is damaged or congested.
Precisely. It's the technical solution to that no single point of failure problem. Incredibly robust, incredibly scalable. The 70s were really about hammering out these protocols, proving they worked, making them the standard. It was deep, foundational engineering work.
And email pops up in the 70s too.
Its first appearance, yeah. Primitive stuff, just text messages between users on connected systems. Not like today's email at all.
But still a big deal for those users.
Oh, absolutely. The essay calls it vital. It allowed asynchronous communication. You didn't both have to be logged in at the same time. That was huge for collaboration among that small community.
And the hidden layers, still there in the 70s.
Very much so. While ARPANET and TCP/IP were developing, the military needs didn't vanish. The essay points to MILNET.
MILNET?
Yeah, an isolated military backbone, separate from ARPANET, physically and logically, specifically for secure military traffic. It shows that need for dedicated non-public networks was still paramount.
So researchers build the public highway rules, the military builds its own private highway right alongside.
That's the picture. And governments generally were building secure cables, physical infrastructure designed for silent communication, away from prying eyes or ears. The essay talks about this era being defined by cold logic, technical architecture, all happening largely hidden from public view.
Most people had no clue.
Zero clue. The web, as the essay says, was growing underneath, like mycelium under the forest floor.
Okay, let's move into the 1980s. This is when the name Internet starts sticking, right? As these different networks connect up.
Exactly. It wasn't just ARPANET anymore. It was becoming a network of networks, all using TCP/IP. And yeah, the term Internet started to take hold.
And things got a little easier to navigate with DNS.
DNS, the domain name system. Yeah, that was a big step. Before that, you needed to know the actual numerical IP address of the computer you wanted to reach, like, 192 point whatever dot whatever.
Impossible to remember.
Totally impractical. DNS created this global address book. It introduced the human readable names we use now, like .com, .org, .edu. You type the name, DNS translates it to the right IP address behind the scenes.
So that's what DNS does. So instead of typing numbers for, say, Stanford, you could type stanford.edu.
Precisely. It was a huge usability leap, even though still all text-based. It helped more universities get connected, expanding the network beyond just the original ARPA sites.
Who was actually using this 80s internet? Still pretty niche.
Oh yeah, very specific group. The essay calls them hackers, students, and early explorers. Mostly people at universities, tech-savvy folks.
What were they doing on it?
Using early services. Usenet, which was like these text-based discussion forums, kind of like early Reddit maybe. FTP for transferring files. Telnet for logging into remote computers. All command line stuff.
And it still looked pretty basic.
Totally. Still mostly text,
Right.
Often black and white, as the essay puts it. No graphics, no clicks. But for that community, it was powerful. The internet didn't have a user-friendly face yet, but with DNS and more connections, the essay says it was gaining a spine, the underlying structure was getting stronger.
And the hidden government networks, still running in parallel.
Absolutely. That theme continues. Behind the scenes, governments were building hidden networks. Encrypted lines, secure channels. The essay mentions early attempts at digital dominance. So while the academic internet grew quietly, this other invisible strategic infrastructure was also being developed. It was this era of quiet exploration for a subculture, but with these state-level currents running underneath.
Then comes the 90s. The web goes public. This feels like the Big Bang, finally.
This is where everything changed for the average person. Tim Berners-Lee at CERN, inventing the World Wide Web. Crucially, it wasn't a new internet, but a layer on top of the existing one.
Using things like HTML, HTTP, and web browsers.
Exactly. HTML let you create pages with text, images, and importantly, links hypertext. HTTP was the protocol to fetch those pages. And browsers like Mosaic, then Netscape, gave you the graphical interface. Suddenly, you could click.
That must have felt revolutionary.
Oh, completely. The essay says the internet became Colorful, messy, human. It wasn't just for techies anymore. Email became an everyday communication tool. People started getting online.
And we got that unforgettable sound.
The modem screech, yes.
Yeah.
Dialing up over phone lines. Slow, noisy. Then came ISDN, early DSL. Faster, always-on connections started appearing.
The internet arrives in homes and businesses, but the hidden networks didn't just vanish, did they?
This is such a key point in the essay. This public explosion happened alongside the continued existence of parallel hidden networks. While you were dialing up, governments weren't using AOL for their secret stuff.
They had their own separate highway.
They were building their own private fiber lines. The essay gives a great example. NASA network transferring space data at speeds far beyond public capabilities. Think about the data from Hubble or probes that needed serious bandwidth long before we had it at home. Secret channels existed alongside the open web.
So while we were discovering geocities and chat rooms,
There's this other, faster, more secure internet operating invisibly. The essay nails it. 2 networks, one visible, one in shadow. The 90s were exciting, democratic in a way, but that parallel strategic development never stopped. It was just hidden.
the 2000s then felt like warp speed, explosion and acceleration.
Totally. That decade was just massive growth. Web explosion and acceleration. Connectivity got faster, access became more normal, and the giant platforms we know today started taking shape.
Right, this is when we get Google really dominating search, YouTube changing video, Facebook starting its climb.
Exactly, and connectivity fueled it. DSL became mainstream broadband for homes. Corporations adopted early fiber optics. Suddenly, the essay says, files flying at the speed of light across transatlantic cables. Streaming started becoming a real thing. The internet wasn't just a tool anymore, it was woven into daily life.
But again, the essay pulls back the curtain. What was happening behind the screen?
This is where the focus shifts strongly towards surveillance and control. As the internet became essential, its value for intelligence gathering just skyrocketed.
Okay.
The essay points to things like the Patriot Act after 9/11, giving governments broader surveillance powers.
Yeah.
Technical capabilities like deep packet inspection, letting network operators, or maybe others, actually look inside the data packets. Not just where they're going, but what's in them. Mirror routing to copy traffic silently for analysis.
Wow. So the infrastructure enabling all this connection was also being tooled up for monitoring.
That's the tension. The dual nature becomes really stark. And alongside that, the separate secure networks continue to evolve. Military-grade VPNs, silent digital highways built specifically for diplomacy, intelligence, and global strategy. Totally separate high-security channels.
It really raises that question the essay brings up. The internet is everywhere, but who controlled it and who watched it?
Exactly. It's not just about faster speeds anymore. It's about power, control, surveillance capabilities growing right alongside the public network's expansion. The excitement of the 2000s boom was real, but so was the rise of this hidden layer of control and strategic communication.
Which leads us into the 2010s, the decade of, well, always online, everywhere, everything.
That sums it up perfectly. Pervasive connectivity. Wi-Fi became as natural as water, the essay says, available everywhere. And the absolute game changer. Smartphones brought the net into every pocket.
Right, the internet wasn't tethered to a desk anymore, it was with you.
Constantly. And then the cloud. The essay says it swallowed everything, photos, work, and even identity. Our digital lives just migrated onto these massive remote servers.
Coupled with social media really taking off.
Yeah, redefining the concept of self and interaction. How you present yourself online, how you connect, and physically, fiber to homes started making inroads, promising those super fast connections right into people's houses.
So, total immersion for many people. But those hidden networks, they didn't get swallowed by the cloud, did they?
Not a chance. The essay is clear. Despite this public hyperconnectivity, the silent parallel networks kept evolving, getting more sophisticated. It mentions NATO-only channels for classified military comms, encrypted embassies with their own secure links, private satellites carrying state-level transmissions, bypassing public infrastructure entirely.
And the physical stuff, the cables under the ocean, still important.
Crucial. Most global data flows through these submarine fiber optic cables, and the essay points to taps in submarine cables, physical interception points. It reminds you the internet isn't just magic airwaves, it's vulnerable physical infrastructure. Hugely strategic.
So the 2010s paradox, incredible personal connection, always on, cloud everything, but underneath, the internet becomes even more strategic and vulnerable.
That's the core tension. The everyday experience was seamless connection. But the underlying reality included state surveillance, strategic maneuvering over physical cables, and these completely separate secure state networks. It makes you ask that question the essay poses. What happens when you can never disconnect? What does that do to us?
Which brings us pretty much to today, the 2020s. The internet isn't even a service anymore, it's just infrastructure.
Yeah, it's like utilities, a given, as the essay puts it, fundamental to everything. Speeds are insane for those who can get them. 1 Gbps, 10 Gbps, even 100 Gbps if you can afford it. Access is still uneven, of course.
But the physical reach is expanding. Fiber, satellites.
Definitely. Fiber optics stretch to rural towns. Satellites lace the sky like Starlink and others, aiming for global coverage. The public network keeps getting faster and wider.
But the layers, the divisions, they're still here, maybe even getting sharper.
It seems so. The essay points to really cutting-edge stuff happening off the public net, like quantum networks beginning in European labs, communication secured by quantum physics, potentially unbreakable by current means. But you also see geopolitical fragmentation. China builds data walls, that's a direct quote from the source, describing national filtering and control. That trend isn't unique. Other countries are doing similar things. The idea of a single global internet is fraying.
And the deepest layers, the shadow webs.
Still very much a thing. Private unlisted cables link defense agencies. Governments deploying entire shadow webs physically separated from the public net. Not just encrypted traffic on the normal internet, but entirely separate physical networks.
So one internet above, another beneath. That description feels very current.
It captures the duality perfectly. Hyperconnectivity and amazing speed for some, alongside growing digital borders, state control, and these incredibly advanced separate networks operating in the shadows. The gap might actually be widening.
So looking out, 2030s and beyond, the essay asks, what's beyond the cable?
Yeah, it starts speculating based on current trends, asking that big question. What happens when everything is connected? Not just phones and computers, but everything.
And it mentions some potential tech.
It does. Quantum encryption, moving out of labs, light-speed photonic transfers, pushing data even faster, even wilder ideas like no more routers, only neural webs, maybe networks that function more like brains. Highly speculative, of course.
And the potential state of being, no more offline, no more unplugging.
That's the really profound implication. What does that mean for being human, for privacy, autonomy? If constant connection is the only option, the essay doesn't predict, but it asks the vital questions. Will it be open or fragmented, unified or geopolitical, liberating or enclosing?
These are huge questions, not just technical.
Not at all. They're about global politics, freedom, the shape of society. And it comes back to control.
Yeah.
Who gets to build the backbone and who gets access to it? Is the future internet for everyone, or will access be another divide?
It really makes you think.
Yep.
Is the future internet something we all own or just something we get to use under someone else's rules?
That's the uncertainty.
It's incredible tracing this path from that tiny low in a lab to global fiber, satellites, quantum labs, shadow webs. It's been a hell of a journey.
It really has. Through quiet pulses, complex protocols, text communities, the visual web explosion, constant acceleration, and always these hidden strategic layers. The essay maps it out so clearly, showing that this dual nature, public and private, open and controlled, was there right from the start.
And that final metaphor the essay uses, it's not a place.
Nope. It concludes, the internet is not a place, it is a mirror.
A mirror reflecting.
Us. How we think, how we share, how we hide. It's tangled up with who we are, our hopes, our fears. It's a tool, sure, but also a space, a collective memory, shaped by us and reflecting us back.
And that reflection shows, well, both sides, good and bad.
Exactly. The essay emphasizes that duality. It can bring us closer or divide us. It can teach or deceive. It can serve or rule.
Yeah.
The technology itself has potential, but its impact comes down to how it's built, how it's governed, how we use it.
So the future isn't just about better tech, faster speeds.
Not primarily, according to this view. That's just the hardware. The real question is about us, our choices, our values, human agency.
It depends on how we choose to use it, how we govern it.
That's the core challenge. The responsibility is ours, the essay argues, to make sure it serves humanity. And it leaves us with this really powerful final thought.
Yeah.
The challenge of staying human in a world where every signal has a trace, and even silence matters.
Wow. Staying human when everything is connected, everything is monitored, everything leaves a trace.
Yeah.
That's definitely something to think about.